Hey guys, Mike from Boyer Bows here. I've been getting a lot of questions about what makes a good backing material and what doesn't, and when should you use this and when should you use that, and a lot of questions about backings for bows. And I just want to address a little bit about how a backing works, why it works, and why you need one in certain cases. Alright, so what I have here drawn out is just these three lines are to represent the side profile of a bow, of the bow limb. Okay, so if this were a bow, if this were the entire length of the bow here, this is the belly down here, this is the back of the bow here. The riser would, this is the part that faces you, this is the part that faces the target. Your handle or riser would be over here, and the string would be over here. You'd bend it and all that sort of thing. Okay. Now, given that's the case, what you have here is the back of the bow, the center of the bow, and the belly of the bow. And that's when the bow is at rest. Okay? Now, what you have, now these lines aren't as nice, but here's the bow bending. When the bow bends, we have certain forces acting on the bow. When it comes to the forces acting on the back of the bow, okay, what's happening is the forces on the wood fibers and the wood cells are stretching this wood. It's the elastic strength of the wood. It's testing the elastic strength of the back of the bow. There's also a little bit of force going in this direction. Okay, now this is why a bow needs to have what I'm calling a good elastic strength. In other words, the ability for the wood cells to stretch when the bow is under tension and then come back to their original size when the bow is no longer under tension. Now the bow's at brace height is always under a little bit of tension, so it never completely goes back to normal, but as far as what the process of drawing the bow and returning, this is the force acting on the bow. It's pulling the fibers away from the center. The interesting thing is when it comes down to the belly of the bow, now you have a reversal. The wood fibers are squishing on top of each other, so they're actually coming in the opposite direction. This is more this direction now, and also there's a downward motion in play. Okay, and this is the compression. This part of the bow is under a compression load. Now everything is being squished together, and what you need here is a bow with a proper compression strength or density that can resist that force. Okay, the interesting thing, the really interesting thing, is that as you travel from the back to the belly, somewhere in the middle, these forces negate each other, and you have this area of no force, this neutral space. In other words, the wood is being pulled this way, it's being pushed together this way, and they cancel each other out, and there's no force acting in the middle of the bow. Okay? Now, in the case of a backing, let's go back down to this drawing for a minute. Let's say you've got a piece of wood that is really, really dense, an excellent piece of wood with compression strength, but not so great with, let's say, elastic strength. Okay? Now what you do is you take a backing and you would put that backing, say, on top of the existing back of the bow. Now when you do that, this is going to be your backing material. And I'll talk about all the different kinds of backing material and how they affect it. But basically, this piece of backing material needs to be something with a tremendous amount of elastic strength. In other words, it can really resist and operate under the forces acting on the back of the bow when they are being stretched and lifted. What you find, for example, a great backing material that has a tremendous, stronger pound for pound than steel is sinew. It is, a lot of people consider it magic. It has such great elastic strength. It's not elastic. What it is it will resist the forces on it. It will stretch and it will return and it will, but it resists those forces as well. So it can operate under the tension and then return without rupturing. It has zero compressive strength. So putting sinew on the belly is just a waste of time, energy, and money. It has zero compressive. If you're wondering, just take a thread, stretch it between your fingers, and then move your fingers closer together, and the thing just goes limp. So the sinew does the same thing. It has no compression strength. But that's not what we use it for. We use it as a backing material. And it may be, like I say, pound for pound, the best backing material there is. Some other great backing materials. Now, I'm going to move up to another couple of lines I drew here. And I'm going to talk about, now let's pretend that what this is the back of the bow with one growth ring lying on top of another. This is when you are reducing bow, you have a piece of wood, your backing material has one growth ring lying on top of another. Now this can be in a board form or a stave form. And for example, you went to reduce this to a single back ring on a stave, and you went through one growth ring and down to another, and so you've got this sort of staggered growth ring. When this starts to spread apart, this is going to want to come up. What's going to happen is, as the force works on it, the more you bend it, this is going to want to break free from the piece of wood below it, the growth ring below it, and you're going to come up like this. This piece is going to come up, and the bow is going to rupture at that point. Because now, all of a sudden, you've got a tremendous reduction all at once in the strength of the bow right at that spot. And it's just going to... But if you were to get a solid backing material, or even sinew, and you put a solid backing over this, now what has happened? Now, let's assume that you've got, some more wood down here as well for the belly. So you've got the wood, good compression strength there. Now what has happened is you've put a backing material with excellent elastic strength that can resist the forces going this way, and this ruptured layer has moved closer to the middle of the bow into what you can call the neutral zone, where no force is acting on it. So because it's moved away from the back, it's away from the center, it's in a spot where a lot less force is now acting on it, and it won't, hopefully it won't rupture. Not only won't it rupture, you've sealed over the top with hopefully a good glue and a proper backing material, so that's absorbing all these intense forces while you've reduced the amount of force acting in this danger area, which is why backing materials can be so important. Now, when it comes to a single growth ring, when we reduce our bows to a single growth ring, basically now what you've got is just, this is the back of the bow. There's no area where something can lift off of the back. It's one solid growth ring. So as you bend, now all you have to worry about is if obviously if you bend too much to rupture that growth ring, but basically you're in absolutely the best position you can ever be in with a single growth ring back. Okay, there's nothing to lift. If there's nothing to lift, there's no weak area that can rupture. I'm going to talk about linen. I kind of categorize, this is just me now, I categorize backing materials in two categories: soft and hard. Soft backing materials would be linen, silk, fiberglass tape, some people use hemp fibers. I've seen people use any number of canvas, any number of things. And what this is doing, in my opinion, is in this case, you're getting something that's really sealing down the back. So, in other words, when I would use these soft materials is if I had a bow, or man, I'm making from a board, for example, where I really think I've got the best possible grain that I can get, that I can find. I mean, it's close to perfect, if not perfect. And the reason these soft materials work is to me, they really just sort of seal the whole thing. They do offer a little bit of elastic strength, but they're so thin that, in my opinion, if you've got anything major wrong, I wouldn't take just any board, back it with silk, back it with linen, or back it with the fiberglass tape and think it's going to work. I would want the best grain pattern I could find, and then it's a little bit of insurance that says to me that if there's anything I missed, if there's any little thing that I just didn't see, or maybe a little runoff that happened in the process of making the bow, just something so minor that could end up breaking the bow, these soft materials will help to prevent that from happening. It's cheap insurance, guys. And then I have in my head what would be construed as hard materials. And what those would be like bamboo strips, hickory backing strips, and I'll talk about that in a second, or solid fiberglass strips. All of these are great in both backing and belly material, frankly. They add a lot of compression strength. They will really raise significantly the poundage on your bow. If you could put any one of these strips on a 20-pound bow, glue it down properly, and now you've got a 60-pound or more bow just by adding that backing strip. They're usually anywhere from 1/8 of an inch thick to a 16th of an inch, but for the most part, I've seen them at 1/8 of an inch, and they will jump your draw weight up to nobody's business high. And in those cases, you can have the worst board in the history of bad boards. You can have the worst grain pattern. It doesn't matter anymore. At that point, you put bamboo strips, hickory backing strips, or fiberglass strips on top of a bad grain pattern, and it might as well be a good grain pattern, because you've just put bamboo has got probably the most elastic strength of any natural material that's from a vegetable source, like a wood source, or bamboo is actually a grass, but you get the idea. Hickory backing strips, what you've done, you order these usually from archery supply houses, and what they are is they're strips of hickory with the absolute perfect grain pattern for elastic strength. They're just cut with the absolutely 100% perfect grain to put on top of a board or your bow that doesn't have such a perfect grain. So you're kind of creating the perfect grain pattern by gluing it down on top of your board. Okay? And they have a tremendous amount of tensile strength as well. Fiberglass strips are, of course, what most of the laminated bows are using these days, if not almost all of them. And that the interlocking of the fibers of the fiberglass is just, it's great for compression. It's great for elastic. It's just, you can't go wrong with it. It's not natural. It's awful to work with, but if you can get beyond that, it's great material. The last thing I do is organic, and this is where sinew and rawhide come in. These are basically, in many ways, the same product. They're both, sinew is made from the tendons of like leg tendons or the long back muscles of the animal, and like I said in the beginning, pound for pound, stronger than steel. Rawhide, on the other hand, is it's like an untanned leather, and it's very resilient. Neither one of these have any compression strength at all, but both have a tremendous amount of elastic strength. In fact, they work even better under tension. In other words, if you are creating reflex in your bow and you put the sinew on top of it, so it's constant, even at brace height, it's under a major elastic stress, it works better than if it's at rest when you're at brace height. I mean, the stuff's amazing. And you can put this stuff, you can put the sinew over bad grain pattern boards, and it'll work perfectly. It'll still work without worrying about breaking your bow. The rawhide, on the other hand, I would still opt to recommend finding the best grain pattern you can with wood. It works very, very, very well. In fact, you probably could get away with a bad grain pattern with the rawhide, but for me, I just like to make sure I can put all my ducks in a row as best I can, and give me the best chances of getting the bow right. Okay, so quick review. We'll use this one. The back, under elastic tension, things are being spread apart. The belly, under compression, things are being squished together. And now it's just a matter of understanding the wood you're using, and coming up with knowing whether or not you need to, knowing whether or not you really need to have a backing in the first place. I like using Osage Orange as my wood of choice to make bows out of from staves. And from a board, hickory sapwood is really the best self-bow making stuff, as long as you get the right grain pattern. But if you don't get if you just go out and buy some hickory sapwood, just go get it. Don't worry about grain pattern. And then you put a bamboo strip, a hickory backing strip, fiberglass strip, sinew on top of it, you're going to have an amazing bow. Why? Because now you've got a strip on the back that can resist all of the elastic forces, as well as you've moved that bad grain pattern down closer to the neutral zone. I love calling it that. The area of no force. And hickory has plenty of compressive strength to handle the situation. Guys, I hope this helped. For those of you who asked me about, can you back a bow with duct tape or gorilla tape or shrink wrap or ace bandages or things like that, the answer's look at the material in question. Can you back a bow with, say, the duct tape? Well, first of all, I don't know that duct tape will stay adhered to the wood. My general answer would be no, you can't. That may be a little unfair. I don't know if you can or can't, but I don't know what the characteristics of duct tape are. I don't know how much elastic strength duct tape has. Certainly, if you're in a position where you're just trying to seal everything down, I guess you're better with it than without it. But there's so many better things out there that'll give you the kind of results you're looking for. You don't have to get so experimental with it, you know. Take an old linen shirt, take an old silk, go to the thrift store, get a silk shirt, a silk scarf, and then glue that down on top of your bow. You got the best grain pattern you could find. You glue that silk down on top of it, and you've got cheap insurance over what you think is the best pattern anyway. It's a great material. It's going to be better than duct tape, guys. And if you've got a bad grain pattern, no, duct tape's not going to work. You got a bad grain pattern, you need something a little more solid, a little more resilient. Okay, I'm probably opening a whole can of worms here. If you guys have questions, I don't know how clear this video was. I'll find out after I watch the video. Hopefully it answered some questions. I'm getting a lot of them about backing material. but please ask me. Please put it in the comments section or send me a message, and I'll do my best to answer them. This is Mike from Boyer Bows, guys. I hope this helped. Hope to answer some questions, and we'll get back to that bill along real soon. Take care, guys.